Assalamu alaikum guys, how are you doing? So today we'll be talking about personal statements, how to write a personal statement, how to make sure it's good and efficient. So essentially it has to be like any other essay, and this whatever I'm saying is going to be relevant to those who are pursuing a field in medicine as well as pharmacy, whatever health career profession you're going for, because they will require you to write a personal statement as well. So it has to be like an essay. So essentially there's an introduction, and then there's body paragraphs, and then there's conclusion, and then in those body paragraphs they're like have to relate to whatever thesis, the sentence you say, which is like a main sentence what you put in the introduction, where it gives you a general idea of what you it's like a quick preview or quick preview, which is like it's like a table of contents. Essentially that's what a thesis is. Essentially what it does is tells you this is what the essay is going to be about, or this is what my body paragraph is going to be about. So in the so there's an introduction, there's a thesis, body paragraphs, and then you restate the thesis, then there's conclusion. So a personal statement is like an essay. It is literally like an ordinary essay, except you put it all on one page, and it has to be in a way organized. So I'm going to count. Give me 1 second. I'm counting the amount of 1 second. Okay, so it has to be about 4,500 characters, which sums around to between 500 to 700 words. My essay personally was 700 words. So essentially what you do is first you have to put like a hook in the essay. You have to set it up in a manner where it grabs the reader's attention. So keep in mind the people who are reading this, they're fellow dental students, people who are sometimes there are people on the board like who are there is some it's a lot of people are reading it. So you have to read in a manner where it's more relatable, where they like it, they enjoy it, where it's unique, where it's not cliched. So that is what you have to set it up in your personal statement. So you put a strong hook. For example, one person said that, like, let me give you one example. There's someone who, when they're applying for dental school, their first sentence was, "I was in prison," and then you're like, "Wow, you're in prison. How did you come here?" Like that, it got them hooked. And then when they started reading it, then they said, "Oh, I was in prison because I was, like I was working there and I was saw this, and therefore like it was completely different, but it still hooked them on." And then when they call that same guy for the interview, like, "Oh yeah, you're that prison guy. We read your paper." It makes them memorable, and therefore that's how he was able to get a spot. And then they were able to engage, and so you have to put in this hook where it's memorable. And what you have to do is you have to be positive, not don't put too much like, "Oh, I had this and this and this. I went through this hardship, this hardship." It just becomes depressing, and the guy's like, it's not necessarily a pity party. You have to be positive, you have to be original, and you have to tell your story. Like, why do you want to be a dentist? You have to emphasize, like, where was that defining moment when you decided to be a dentist? And, for example, you want to avoid emphasizing the negativity. Like if you went through some traumatic event, and you do not absolutely should not wait till the last minute to do this. In fact, this is something you could probably start as soon as possible. It's like an ordinary essay. It's 4,500 characters, so essentially it's like a page, and you just have to explain why you want to go to dentistry. So set up your make a defining write some sort of story or some kind of defining moment, or just write a very something that captures the reader's attention. That should be your introduction. That should be your first sentence or something. And then from there, give a brief, like a preview in your introduction, like as give a brief as to why, like why dentistry is a fit for you, why you would be a good dentist or whatever. And then the other paragraphs in the middle of the essay is discussing each of the idea that you brought up. So if you brought up like you want to go to dentistry because it's a very artistic field, then yeah, that one paragraph will be about your art skills and how that relates. And then one would be like, for example, what I personally did. For example, my first defining moment was when I was sick. There was a time when I became ill, and I was in the hospital and stuff like that, and how I became depressed and reclusive. And then from there, like it's not always my essay. It's not all negativity. I did use some negativity, but it's to capture the reader's perspective. But I talked about how then there was a positivity, how then there was staff members in the hospital. They gave me advice. They gave me hope. They were so attentive to me, and I really liked that. And that's what made me go on dentistry, because dentistry is a very intimate field. You get to be very involved with patients. So that's how I made it, and I said why I want to be dentistry, because It combines my passion for art, and then one of my body paragraphs was about art. It gives me a chance to have to be helpful to the community. Then there's one paragraph about the community. Then there's one how I have a direct impact on patients. Like then that's another paragraph about being my direct impact on patients. And then conclusion is summarizing all that and restating my thesis. So my thesis was this: I quickly found dentistry to be the perfect fit for me as it allows me to be personally involved with people's healthcare and the community, combine my passion for art, and give me the chance to have a direct impact on patients. So that's my thesis. So essentially, it gives you an idea what my essay is going to be about. And then each of those paragraphs was focused on each individual idea that I brought up. So you have to you have to like make sure when you're writing this, like I said, do it ahead of time. Make sure you get it checked by everyone you know. Make sure to go over it several times. And sometimes, when you may not spot mistakes right there at the moment. So what you should do, you should take a step back, take a break, come the next day or maybe a few days later, and then look. Oh, and then you'll see mistakes you've done. Another thing is when you're writing an essay is you read out loud, your essay. You read, okay, you may not spot your mistakes then, but when you're reading it aloud, then sometimes, like in your brain, it may sound, oh, this sounds perfect. But when you read it out, you're like, okay, this clearly is filled with grammatical errors. So that would definitely help. And make sure like whatever your ideas you bring up, and you have to make sure you relate to why you want to be dentist. Why you want to be a dentist. So as I said, I mentioned in my essay, I'm gonna share now mine. Is like I said, I became sick, became ill, and then the hospital staff was kind to me and good, and then that made me want to go into dentistry because it combines my passion for art, my chance to have an impact on the patients, and as well as the healthcare and the community. But also keep in mind, whichever order you bring up the ideas, that's the order your paragraph should be. So since I brought up first about people's healthcare and the community, that's what my first, you know, yeah, that's what my paragraph would be. And so then, for example, that's what my first paragraph was. And then my second idea that I brought was about art. Then that's what my second paragraph was. So, for example, I talked about how the way I could be impacted on people and the community was how I used my major anthropology. How I was able to work with different people, backgrounds, learn many different viewpoints in terms of religion, race, and culture. And these experiences have been rewarding and therefore helped me be better equipped as a healthcare provider. And then how I've been as a tutor at the local community at the mosque for at-risk youth as well as dealing with refugees. So that's my first paragraph. Second paragraph was about my how I have a passion for art, and how when we're as dentists, we're always shaping the teeth, we're shading it, we're sculpting teeth, we're like that's what I also describe how my passion for calligraphy, my passion for sculpting clay, and how dentistry is a very precise thing, and art is also you have to be very precise with your hands. And the last one was the impact you see on patients, like on them, on seeing how the direct impact on them. And I talked about how when you see someone giving them the relief and happiness, and how it relates to my religion, how that when you greet others with a smile, it's a charity, but even greater charity is putting a smile on someone's face. And then my conclusion was essentially restating that thesis. Yet ultimately, my goal as a dentist is to fully utilize my artistic abilities, passion for hands-on work, as well as my experiences with health and culture in order to be most efficient in accommodating my patients' needs. And then summarize the whole thing. So that's essentially what my personal statement is. Now, keep in mind, I will post this online so you guys have a general idea to look off, and it can serve as a study guide. And of course, if you have any questions of any kind or any concerns, leave it in the comments below, and I will do all the best I can to help you. But that should summarize how you should do your personal statement. And I advise you to start getting on this soon and work on it as possible. Right? Thank you. And the next video will be 1 second. Okay, so the next video will be the DAT. I will be talking about how you can study for the DAT and what tools and tips you can do to make sure you succeed in it. Right? Thank you, and tune in for more videos and subscribe. And inshallah, we will see you again. Assalamu alaikum.